Are you expecting Sheena to be at your Q&A this week?
We reformatted our Q&A because it just focused on this, the investigation, and not the work that my deputy mayors have done and will continue to do. And I don't want to put my deputy mayors through that. And I thought it was unfortunate that there was a lie passed out that First Deputy Mayor Wright was escorted out of City Hall. That was just a lie. It was a lie that she resigned on Friday. It was a lie. I think there's so many mistruths out there that we need to be accurate, and all you got to do is ask the administration. And so it's unfortunate that First Deputy Mayor Wright had to go through those series of lies and hysteria. It's like a feeding frenzy of accuracy and truthfulness does no longer matter. We should allow the process to take its place, and that's the discipline that I have and I'm going to maintain.
Is she planning to resign, and what are you looking for in the next First Deputy Mayor?
When the decision is made of policy, we must have said this 1,000 times in this administration, not only now, but in the past. When the decision is made for policy shifts, no matter if we bring someone on or someone decides to leave, we make it a formal announcement so that there's no rumors attached to it. And I'm looking for exactly what Sheena has always brought to us, a level of commitment and dedication. As long as she wants to do that, I'm happy to have her. And whoever comes in any of our positions, we want that same level of commitment and dedication.
Adams, are you able to confirm that report from the Post that Phil Banks delivered a letter of resignation last night?
We spoke yesterday, and we spoke again this morning, and he stated he wants to transition to some other things with his life, and he doesn't want this to be a constant burden on the work that we're doing in the city, and I accepted his resignation. A long time, great public servant, from the chief of department to the deputy mayor of public safety, and all the initiatives, even the last initiative he's doing with removing the ghost cars off our streets. I wish my good friend well.
Welcome back to another edition of the Sal Greco Show, and I'm the host, Sal Greco. Thank you for tuning in. I know it's been a while. I've been a little busy. I went to Asheville, North Carolina. I was there to render myself to the residents of Asheville for hurricane relief support. The town was hit with Hurricane Helene, and it was pretty devastating. I took a few videos, which I'll play in a moment, as shows some of the devastation that took place there. And it's just it's a heart. You got to have heart to try to put this into perspective, what went on there. And you have to feel for the residents. This isn't New York City. I mean, I experienced this as a police officer in the 60th precinct when Hurricane Sandy hit. And New York City, though, is pretty quick on its feet and has the resources to be up right away. North Carolina does not. I will debunk some things and certify others. So FEMA was on site. They were in front of me. I was talking to them. Also, the FBI was there. Also, Homeland Security was there. Border Patrol was there. And they were scouring the area mostly for, if there was any survivors or any, buddy that's missing, because they were with cadaver dogs. The area was surrounded by them. So they did some good work. I saw the helicopters up. That was the National Guard. So that was going on as well. But also there was somebody there with their own food cart that came to feed all of the workers that were there, people that needed to eat. And apparently one of their shipments of food that was going to be for them was actually confiscated by FEMA, who apparently gave that to some other area or some other place that was needed. So some of what you heard is true. And it's pretty alarming there, but my heart goes out to them. And now we're going to get ready for another hurricane that's going to hit Florida. And that's about to hit. And there's so much other news going on. So while I'm in North Carolina and I'm finally making my way back to South Florida, I was viciously attacked on X by someone we're going to call them a miscreant cretin who looks like, I don't know what to say, a villain from the Muppets. And they were attacking me with libelous claims, frivolous conjecture. But I'll spare you the story here because I posted a little bit about this person, and it's quite alarming what this person is involved in because it looks like they're very chummy with the Eric Adams administration. And speaking of the Eric Adams administration, let's read and show you just a little bit of the news just in the last few hours. And I understand Tim Pearson, his closest advisor, he did resign. Apparently now Philip Banks, the deputy mayor of public safety, he resigned. We had 4 other people resign right after Philip Banks resigned. And as I posted recently, Eric Adams should be stepping down in the next 2 weeks. But let's play these articles and show you these articles and actually read them off to you. Philip Banks III, Adams public safety deputy and longtime confidant, resigns under mounting pressure. Governor Hochul is among those urging the mayor to clean house of close advisors under investigation following his indictment on corruption charges. This is by Greg Smith and Katie Honan of the city, doing an unbelievable job. Greg Smith is the dean of journalists in New York City. Katie Honan has been all over this administration. I sincerely applaud your work. You are outstanding. Philip Banks III, Mayor Adams' deputy mayor for public safety and a longtime associate of the mayor, resigned Sunday night, weeks after his home was raided and phone seized by federal authorities investigating potential corruption in the Adams administration. The exit from Adams' team is one of several by top Adams advisors, including schools chancellor David Banks, who is Philip Banks' brother, the chancellor's wife, first deputy mayor Sheena Wright, and police commissioner Edward Caban. Another close aide to Adam and Philip Banks, senior advisor Tim Pearson, also stepped down. This mass exodus is accelerating after the mayor was indicted on bribery and campaign finance fraud charges last month in one of 4 federal investigations and a simultaneous ongoing inquiry by the Manhattan District Attorney relating to campaign finance, city contracts, and other potential wrongdoing. Banks' resignation, first reported by the New York Post, follows weeks of pressure by elected officials, including Governor Kathy Hochul, who has the power to remove the mayor, demanding that Adams cleans house of close associates under investigation. In an interview on New York One early Monday, Adams confirmed Philip Banks' departure. We spoke yesterday, we spoke again this morning, and he stated he wants to transition to other things with his life, and he doesn't want this to be a constant burden on the work that we're doing in the city, and I accepted his resignation, the mayor said. I wish my good friend well. Banks, along with his brother, David, and sister-in-law, Wright, had their electronic devices seized by investigators in early morning visits to their homes on September 4th. Controversial tenure. From the start, Banks' appointment to the top ranks of the Adams administration was controversial. The namesake son of Philip Banks Jr., a cop whom Adams has described as a mentor, Philip Banks III, joined the department as a street cop and rose steadily through the ranks to be chief of department, the highest-ranking uniformed member of the department. In 2014, that trajectory suddenly came to a halt, with rumors swirling that then Mayor Bill de Blasio was considering making him commissioner. Banks suddenly resigned. The reason why surfaced soon after. He had been named as an unindicted co-conspirator in a federal corruption investigation of the department. 2 Brooklyn businessmen, Joan Reichnitz and Jeremy Reichberg, admitted they'd been paying bribes to a handful of mid- and top-level cops and one of Banks' closest friends, the head of the corrections union, Norman Seabrook, for favorable treatment from the NYPD. Reichnitz, Reichberg, and Seabrook were all convicted and sentenced to prison time. In prosecuting Seabrook at trial, federal authorities painted a damning picture of Philip Banks III. They documented that the corrupt duo had paid for expensive restaurant meals, sports tickets, and junkets to Israel and the Dominican Republic for several cops, including Banks. They also found Banks had accepted $20,000 in gifts from one of the businessmen disguised as interest on an investment and alleged that Banks had $300,000 in unexplained cash he never reported to the IRS stashed in multiple bank accounts. On some days, agents surveilling Banks observed him making deposits at multiple ATMs in different locations. In exchange, the businessmen boasted about their access to the top ranks of the police department. At one point, they got Banks to store diamonds they were planning to sell inside a safe at one police plaza. Banks was not charged and later claimed that cash was from poker winnings. He repeatedly denied doing anything in return for the perks he got from the corrupt duo, but his career within the NYPD was over. By 2021, his friend Eric Adams apparently did not see any of this as an impediment to welcoming him into his new administration. After Adams was elected and before he arrived at City Hall, Banks assisted Adams in vetting public safety-related appointments, including interviewing candidates for police commissioner. Then in January 2022, Adams rewarded him with one of his first appointments, naming him deputy mayor for public safety. The vaguely defined job gives Banks free rein to intervene in the affairs of the NYPD, even though he had no formal oversight role of the nation's biggest police department. He frequently met with top uniformed chiefs without former police commissioner Keyshawn Sewell present. He often promoted high-tech devices and software from metal detectors to drones to AI software aimed at solving crime that the department purchased. And questions of conflict of interest surfaced recently when a security firm he owned between his departure from the NYPD and his arrival at Adams City Hall won a $154 million NYCHA contract and was placed on a pre-qualified list for no-bid MWBE contracts by the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. The mayor's communications office has stated Banks sold his interest in Overwatch in 2018, but records filed with the Department of State show Banks listed as a partner in the firm through June 2020. Banks also emerged in a federal inquiry regarding a Florida-based tech firm. SaferWatch hired his brother, Terrence, to gain favor with him and his school chancellor brother, David Banks. The firm hired a lobbyist who met with both Philip and David Banks to pitch the company's panic button app for the city school system. Soon after, SaferWatch also hired Terrence Bank, and the NYPD School Safety Office brought in SaferWatch for a pilot program at 5 schools with the intent of taking it citywide. Despite all this, Adams has steadfastly voiced his support for Banks, in part due to his longstanding ties to the Banks family. His NYPD mentor, Banks Jr., was a longtime leader of the 100 Black Men of New York. At the same time, Adams led the similarly named 100 Blacks in law enforcement. The mayor recently noted his long relationship that includes every member of the Banks family. Question about whether he was considering moving Philip Banks III as deputy mayor, he brushed off this suggestion, stating, "I will continue to have a relationship with the Banks family." Security guards sue former Adams advisor Tim Pearson for a shelter attack. "Bitch, do you know who I am?" Pearson shouted at one employee before throwing her to the ground, the lawsuit alleges. This is by Gwen Hogan from The City. 3 shelter guards are suing the city and Mayor Eric Adams embattled former advisor Tim Pearson, alleging he attacked them last fall when they asked for his identification at the entrance to a Midtown migrant shelter. "Bitch, do you know who I am?" Pearson shouted at Arrow security employee Leisha Bell as he grabbed her by the neck with both hands and threw her to the ground, according to the lawsuit filed Monday in state Supreme Court. He also physically shoved 2 other guards, Terrence Rosenthal and Angelica Weldon, in the altercation, according to the lawsuit. Nicholas Pilucci, a spokesperson for the city's law department, which is representing Pearson in a series of 4 sexual harassment lawsuits he faces, declined to comment on the latest lawsuit against Pearson. Pearson's personal lawyer, Hugh Moe, who is representing Pearson in a federal inquiry into Adams and Associates, didn't return a request for comment immediately. The chaotic scene was first reported on by the New York Post and the New York Daily News last October, citing police sources who said the shelter guards had exceeded their authority. A spokesperson for Adams also defended Pearson, saying he had been accosted by a contractor operating the site. But the city obtained eyewitness testimony from a dozen shelter workers filed as part of an internal report on the incident, where all of them described Pearson attacking the guards first when he failed to show identification. Bell and Rosenthal were both arrested and held at a precinct for hours, where the New York Times later reported Pearson tried to intimidate them and threatened that they would be fired. Ultimately, the Manhattan District Attorney dropped the criminal charge against both guards, but the incident has caused the 3 security guards severe emotional distress, the new lawsuit alleges. Jason Steinberger, an attorney for the 3 guards, said only Rosenthal continues to work for Arrow Security. The 3 guards are seeking monetary damages for verbal abuse, physical abuse, false arrest, and false imprisonment perpetrated by Pearson, the NYPD, and other city officials. The city of New York and the mayor, Eric Adams, knew Timothy Pearson was not qualified to serve in this administration, and despite continued substantiated allegations of misconduct and knowing he posed a risk to the safety of others, they continued his employment and unnecessarily exposed him to the public, Steinberger said. Crumbs. Pearson, Adams' longtime pal, close advisor, resigned last week, one of a string of high-profile resignations in the month since federal investigators seized the phones and raided the homes of a cadre of top Adams officials. Adams was subsequently indicted on 5 federal corruption charges, while Governor Kathy Hochul reportedly urged Adams to clean house of problematic members of his inner circle like Pearson. Ahead of the latest lawsuit, Pearson was already facing 4 lawsuits from police officers who worked underneath him at the Municipal Services Assessment, a shadowy unit created by an Adams executive order to conduct spot inspections of other agencies and find savings. The suits allege Pearson repeatedly sexually harassed a female officer and then retaliated against her and others when they tried to report the abuse. Those lawsuits also describe Pearson, who had a powerful role granting and blocking city contracts related to migrant shelters, regularly talking about seeking kickbacks from city contracts, which he described as crumbs, earning him the nickname Crumbs among staffers. The city is covering Pearson's legal fees for the civil cases against him, while he hired a private attorney to represent him in the federal inquiry. While the scope of that federal investigation isn't yet clear, it may possibly center around city contracting. Pearson had his phones, documents, and cash from his Long Island home last month. Winnie Greco, Rana Abasova, among 4 Adams aides out in dramatic day of departures. This is by Chris Sommerfeld and Josephine Stratman of the Daily News, doing excellent work out there. At least 4 aides are leaving the Adams administration, a dramatic set of City Hall departures that comes on the heels of multiple other high-level resignations over the past few weeks and the mayor's indictment on federal corruption charges, the Daily News has learned. Among those leaving are 2 longtime aides ensnared in federal probes. Rana Abasova, who was director of protocol in Adams International Affairs Office, was fired Monday, and Winnie Greco, who served as a liaison to China for the Adams administration, has resigned, sources told the Daily News. Greco was called in on Friday and told to resign. Sources familiar with the matter said Greco was spotted at City Hall on Friday, at one point appearing comforted by Ingrid Lewis-Martin, chief advisor to Adams. Their heads were lowered and Lewis-Martin rested a hand on Greco's shoulder as they left the building. Mohammed Baal, senior Muslim liaison to the mayor, resigned from his post effective Monday, a source close to the matter said. And Azan Chuktai, a senior advisor for South Asian and Muslim affairs, was also fired within the past couple of weeks, multiple sources said. Both Winnie Greco and Mohammed Bayi today tendered their resignations. We thank them for their service to the city, Fabian Levy, a spokesperson for Adams, said. Abasova had been placed on unpaid leave after the feds raided her home last year in connection with the probe looking into whether Adams accepted and solicited bribes and illegal campaign contributions from the government of Turkey and its associates, carrying out favors in return. Prosecutors say Abasova, who is not named in a 5-count criminal indictment, coordinated with Turkish officials to set up straw donations and travel upgrades for Adams. She is cooperating with federal authorities and is considered a key witness against Adams, the news previously reported. Adams, who was indicted in the case late last month, has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Rachel Maimin, Abasova's attorney, declined to comment. Greco's Pelham Bay homes were raided in February. On the same day, the feds also raided the New World Mall in Queens, where Greco helped host lucrative fundraisers for Adams' 2021 campaign, collecting some illegal straw donations, as reported by the news outlet The City. The exact nature of that investigation remains unclear. She returned to her post as Asian Affairs Director in May after being placed on paid leave following the FBI raids on her property. Greco also has ties to China, and she served as a consultant for multiple local groups funded by Beijing's communist government, the news previously reported. Chung Tai has been an influential Adams campaign surrogate in the city's Pakistani communities, and he also donated $1,000 to the mayor's reelection campaign in June 2023, records show. The news comes just hours after news broke early Monday that Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks resigned over the weekend. He is one of 5 top Adams advisors who had their homes raided and electronics seized on September 4th as part of several federal corruption investigations. Previously, Schools Chancellor David Banks, Senior Adams Advisor Tim Pearson, and NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban, all who were raided that day, had already announced their resignations. Well, as I just showed you and read off these articles, it is very damning what's going on here. I don't think the city can function. And there's more, because we have other characters that were involved in this administration, like the New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda. You have this new police commissioner, Thomas Donlin. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on. When does it all end is the question, because New York City residents and taxpayers cannot be burdened with this insanity. Just alone today, there were 5 resignations. 5 resignations in one day in one administration. That is alarming. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know how much more New York City can take of this, because let's be honest, The question now will be, does Eric Adams have a secret clearance from the federal government involving classified info, like, I don't know, a terrorist threat to New York City? He can't get that info, right? He's indicted. I mean, what about his police commissioner that also was raided, had documents seized from his home? And also, from what I understand and what the sources are telling me, his phone. How are these elected officials and leaders of the most powerful, the most biggest police department in the United States, how are you going to move forward if you can't even get access to information like that, which is needed for public safety? And I understand there are people that are crying about the aspects of Jumaane Williams becoming the mayor. Well, unfortunately, New York City voted for him as public advocate. But on the flip side, Jumaane Williams is also taking questionable donations from people in the Eric Adams world that were in his indictment. So therefore, Jumaane Williams will be under investigation almost immediately. And we have to wonder if there's anybody that is clean that could run this city as mayor. So I would like to show this one clip of me on September 16th. That was on Armstrong Williams show. We were discussing Eric Adams, and I laid out a prediction, and I laid out other things. And let's roll to the videotape.
You know, the problem with with lies is that lies find itself halfway around the world before the truth can ever catch up. You know, that's the problem with lies. Sal, you know, how does the resignation of Mayor Adams' chief counsel affect the ongoing federal probes, and what are the implications of this resignation for Mayor Adams' administration moving forward? You've talked about this repeatedly since joining our show over a year ago, and it's all coming full circle now.
Well, Eric Adams is probably the most conflicted individual in politics today. But with that being said, what's at the crux of this case is the police commissioner and his brothers, and then we also have the first deputy mayor, Banks, and his brothers that are all working underneath Eric Adams. Basically, they see an opportunity. If Eric Adams, so all you're hearing about is how he's being, he's got campaign finance violations, he's taking trips to foreign nations, they're paying into his campaign. What do you think the underlings are going to do? The only thing here is, Armstrong, I'd like to point out that in a crime syndicate, which is what we have here now, you're starting to see it. In a crime syndicate, they need a base of operations. So that base of operations, like I stated numerous times before, where every politician, especially the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, and the Assembly Speaker, Carl Hastie, and the District Attorney of the Bronx, Darcel Clark, were all seen partying, hanging out with, is at Con Sofrito in the Bronx, which was owned by Eddie Caban's brother, Richie. Okay, and the brother James, the twin brother, they're all hanging out over there. Now you're hearing about what? An extortion racket where they went around with police officers with his brother, who's not a cop, but Eddie Caban assigned these cops with him to go extort people. That's official misconduct already, Armstrong. We're not even going to talk about any other crime yet. So, I mean, and the rumor here, Armstrong, was that the Caban brothers, since the 90s, were friends with this Jimmy Rodriguez character, who's a criminal. He's a self-admitted criminal and a mob associate. He was the manager of Con Sofrito. He used to own a place called Jimmy's Bronx Cafe. And this was going on back in that day where they were doing security for him. And now you're hearing 35 years later and 30 years later, I guess the operation expanded once he became the police commissioner. I mean, it's not really a surprise because this is stuff that many people were reporting on inside the police department, or stuff that was going on there. There's all kinds of allegations. There was all kinds of allegations with the Caban starting from the 90s. And now you're seeing it play out. But the media, once again, here, Armstrong, I don't know what it is with Eric Adams. That sometimes they want to report things that happen. Other times they just want to give him, the high five, even though we're looking going, I can't believe you're not saying anything there. But the police department, the upper echelon, Armstrong, it's epically corrupt because they're all looking at Eric Adams saying, well, just like Timmy Pearson says, where's my crumbs?
Do you think he's going to be indicted?
Without a doubt, Armstrong, you're going to see a lot of movement in the next 2 weeks. There were subpoenas that flew today out of the 41st precinct. Over the weekend, they went to the 34th precinct, the 25th precinct, the commanding officer, the 34th precinct. And you saw Damian Williams announce an indictment today on the FDNY chiefs, which, by the way, Eric Adams at his press conference stated, oh, this was due to a complaint from the Department of Investigation. No, Damian Williams actually said it came from a complaint from a civil lawsuit. Eric Adams cannot tell the truth. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he just can't right now. There's going to be indictments, and the road, Armstrong, leads to Eric Adams. But I believe if Damian Williams is really swinging for the fences, look out, Tish James, because her face was plastered all over that nightclub and with these individuals and in other nightclubs as well. So this leading to other questions in the background. So as you can see, I was even predicting this indictment looming over Eric Adams' head, and then it finally happened. And now, right on this show, just like I did on X, I am predicting that Eric Adams in the next 2 weeks will either be stepping down or forcefully being removed by the governor or this committee. This charade cannot go on. And also, according to sources and rumors circulating, that the Eastern District of New York is about to roll out their own set of indictments shortly. This corruption scandal, it looms very large, not only over this administration, but the city. And it just all needs to come to an end. These people that are in charge, step down, get out of the way. This is an absolute embarrassment. And by the way, the taxpayers should not be paying for anyone's legal defense or their defense in the sexual misconduct cases. That means you, Timmy Pearson. That means you, NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell. That means you, NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry. That means you, the civilian known as or named Brian Adams from Community Affairs. That means you, Deputy Commissioner Kaz Dawdry. You're all involved in a case, the Dana Ratchland case, among others. There's other cases with other people involved. The city taxpayer cannot pay for your legal defense for sexual harassment. And these are some of the things that need to be, unwinded and reversed immediately. This administration is an embarrassment to New York City, an embarrassment to the police department, and a stain on the history of New York City. And now we're going to have to start correcting course. I applaud not only the Southern District of New York with Damian Williams, but the Eastern District of New York with Breon Peace for having the courage to actually do something and hold people accountable, especially elected officials and public officials as well as public servants, because this is alarming. And once again, before we go running saying Letitia James for mayor, wasn't that Letitia James hanging out at Con Sofrito with a bunch of felons and thugs and all kinds of different people? And heck, she has her own problems with campaign finance issues with donations that came in. And God knows what she was involved with, hanging out with all of these guys, including Carl Hastie, the public. He's the Assembly Speaker for the New York State Assembly. A lot going on there. Silence from all these people. No mention of being their friends or partying all the time anymore. It's quite a fall from grace. So then I would like to state I was on the Joe Hoft show today, and I'm going to play that for you all. And that's how we're going to end the show today. But before we do that, if you're on YouTube, if you can, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the notification button on Rumble. On Rumble, you can hit that Rumble button. You can also click that follow button. And if you're listening on the podcast streaming platforms like Apple, Spotify, give it a like and also subscribe to it so that you could hear any new episodes that come your way. And all I could say is I pray for New York City all the time. I pray for this country, and corruption must be rooted out. It's something that is just sinister and evil. I hate to keep hitting this nail, but on the wall. But let's face it. Once everybody is either indicted or we start hearing about other indictments, and the city could go back to normal, because we need the city to go back to normal. We need some kind of normalcy, and we need some kind of continuation in the government. This is an absolute disgrace. And let's pray for New York City. And with that, we'll play this interview I did with Joe Hoft on the Joe Hoft Show. And I will see all of you very soon. Just pray also for Florida and North Carolina. If anybody could lend a hand and support, or maybe send supplies down North Carolina and soon, shortly, Florida, please just consider your fellow man and woman that may be stranded or having damage. to their property or their items or anything worse, God forbid, a fatality. So with that being said, I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good night. See you on the next one.
Without further ado, let me introduce to you a good man and a good friend. He's been around. I've talked to him a number of times over the past couple of years, and he's got one heck of a story, and it's all falling together now. I've had him on the show before. He's a former policeman in New York City by the name of Sal Greco. Sal, welcome to the Joe Hoft Show.
Joe, it's an honor to be here once again. It's funny, Joe. I think you and I kind of started the downfall of Eric Adams together, actually.
It's fantastic. People don't understand this. Maybe we could, Sal, if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up a picture of a couple posts that you helped me put together. You gave me some great information, and then maybe before that, maybe first you should tell us a bit about your story that leads up to these stories that you shared with me. I'll share a couple of those articles, then we can talk about how that impacts today. But tell us your story. How did you come to the limelight in New York City?
Well, Joe, as you know, I was a veteran in the NYPD for 14 years. I had an unblemished record, but we both have a friend in common that the police department apparently doesn't like, and that's Roger Stone. They also seem to not like Trump supporters, so therefore they started a witch hunt on me. They accused me of being uncompensated security for Roger. They called Roger a criminal, and they used a provision in the NYPD patrol guide, which is what governs every rank in the police department, and a rule in there that states that you cannot wrongfully or knowingly associate with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity, i.e. Roger Stone. Therefore, they ultimately put me through an internal trial, which was a Soviet show trial. I was, they railroaded me in there. They said I was guilty of everything. Therefore, I was terminated, and then I countered with my own lawsuit against the police department, who a few months later was seen hobnobbing with Cardi B, who's a convicted criminal, in a police academy. She was escorted in there. It's a secure facility. That's a problem. And then ultimately, Joe, I came to find out about this restaurant, nightclub in the Bronx. It was called Con Sofrito. It was out in the industrial section of the Bronx, and it was owned by the police commissioner at that time, Ed Caban's brother, Richard Caban, and co-managed or allegedly creator-manager of the place, Jimmy Rodriguez, a self-admitted criminal and mob associate. Now, Joe, we were talking about this last time. Who's Jimmy Rodriguez? Well, I'll tell everyone who's Jimmy Rodriguez. First of all, he's very close with the Clintons. He's pictured with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Why is that, you ask? He owned a place back in the day in the Bronx called Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, where even Fidel Castro showed up there. And he's known to be, he's embedded in the Democrat Party in New York State. He knows most of the big players there. They all hang out in his place. But his place was so infamous for being notorious for having nefarious characters there. There were 14 gang members that were arrested out of his place federally. He himself owned the place back in the day called Marisca del Caribe, where the feds busted in, arrested his partner or something, and of course, he got let off. It's amazing how many times this guy gets let off. And then, of course, Major League Baseball banned their players from being at Jimmy's Bronx Cafe for at least 2 years. It's unbelievable why the police department ever associated with this guy who's a manager or business partner of Richard Caban, the brother of the former police commissioner who resigned, Ed Caban, and they're up to their eyeballs, Joe, with stuff there. Me and you, we actually wrote an article highlighting what was going on at that time, and it was the downfall of this entire scenario and situation here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it was thanks to you. You shared this with me. We put it up, and it was bombshells at the time. We put it up at Gateway Pundit, I believe at joehoft.com, and this stuff is just, it's dynamite, and thanks to you. Beginning of the end of Eric Adams. So to summarize what you just shared, though, too, here you're just a great policeman doing your job, loving your job in New York City. You meet Roger Stone. You become his friend. just like others. And then all of a sudden, they put you on the chopping block because you have befriended Roger Stone. They say, well, you can't because he's a convicted felon, even though he'd been pardoned by President Trump. So they rule on this. They say that you're guilty and that you're no longer a policeman. Now, I believe you've sued the city or the police department. Is that case still open? Is it still moving forward?
Yes, we're supposed to now soon get the final pieces of discovery. I didn't get everything, obviously, but now we're going to move into depositions. And everybody look out, because there's a litany of people, of course, that were partying up there at Con Sofrito, including the very one person in particular that was seen with Jimmy Rodriguez, which is in the lawsuit. She's the former police commissioner, the one that did ultimately terminate me, and that's Keishant Sewell. I wonder what she knows about what's going on here. So this is going to get very interesting. And of course, at the top of the list, who do you have? Mayor Eric Adams. Eric Adams, who is, I mean, just today, Joe, his deputy mayor of public safety, Philip Banks, resigned this morning. And everybody who's very big around him and his administration have virtually resigned. All that's really left is who? Eric himself. And I expect that to happen within the next 2 weeks.
Wow. Well, let's show a picture of this first piece here. This was the part 2 of this series of, I believe, 5 articles where we talked about Eric Adams, New York City Mayor Adams, Letitia James. Some people have heard of her, Police Commissioner Caban. And they're all aligned with drugs and corruption. And it all really centers around this one man here. There's a picture of him with Letitia James. Maybe you can kind of walk us through this, Sal, kind of fill us in on what's going on here.
Well, this is clearly at Con Sofrito, and there's Letitia James, who is the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New York. Now, Joe, there's other things that also we ended up finding out. I legally obtained the paperwork from the New York Police Department to the State Liquor Authority, because remember how this guy in this place kept all their, they remained open. There's no record of them ever being closed for anything, despite all these nefarious things that they were involved in. They didn't pay their rent. They didn't pay the water bill. They were cited numerous violations from the fire department. They were ordered to shut down this party shed, which is where this picture is taken, and they didn't. Yet there were thousands of people that went there. Joe, they had a violation from the health board, numerous, where mice were in the food. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Yet they remained open. They remained open. And here's a picture here, Letitia James. And what matters here is, just before this became Con Sofrito, it was named Acri Cafe. And what we learned through another outlet, City and State, was that there was another individual that was an owner of this place, with Jimmy Rodriguez yet again being the creative manager. And this person was an Albanian guy. I believe his last name was Mehmet. And there was an incident that happened in August of 2021. So this individual had sold the place on paper or whatever it was to Richard Caban, and then sold all the inventory to Richard Caban, because there was a small moment where Con Sofrito was operating with that name and the liquor license was under the other guy's name, and he can't do that. That was a whole nother issue. So a few months after it's officially Con Sofrito, there's an incident that occurred, and then this police department referral letter that I had, it's a criminal referral to the State Liquor Authority, and it's from the Vice Human Trafficking Unit. So what really was going on there, we don't know. But we know a few months later, this individual that was the former business partner with Acri Cafe, and when he became Con Sofrito, that individual was picked up for human trafficking from the Canadian border into, I think, Vermont or New York State. He was picked up, he was charged, and currently he has a 3-year probation. I guess he pled guilty to that. So there's something there. And the police department, Joe, the police department after this referral, we never hear about anything again. There was also a State Liquor Authority investigation that goes nowhere. They basically revoke the investigation and don't explain anything to anyone. Then, lo and behold, Joe, 6 months later, the buildings department shows up and orders them to tear down the shed, right? This shed. But they never did. So that was one of the court orders they violated. And by the way, Joe, the head of the buildings department was Eric Ulrich, an indicted person right now. Another guy that was in Eric Adams' administration. Remember, Eric told them, watch your phones. Remember that whole ordeal? So Eric Ulrich very recently commented on Jimmy Rodriguez's Facebook or some post he put up, which I featured on my own show, the Sal Greco show. And at the very end of the show, I posted this. So Eric Ulrich, did he know Jimmy Rodriguez also? Because apparently he was the head of the buildings department that let him get away with everything there at Con Sofrito. It's such a web. And the allegations are so much in this place, Joe. It's like they all hang out there. It's a crime syndicate, Joe.
Yeah, sure is. Hey, Chris, if you could go down in this article, maybe we'll kind of point out a couple things too. I think we had some more pictures. So that's Rodriguez with Letitia James, right? Mm-hmm. And then we talked about this. Letitia was hanging around this place with these guys. This is the same time she's going after Trump. Now, I've heard that she may be losing her. Is she losing her bar license? Is that true? Is there rumors true on that?
They're going. I would state that she needs to be investigated immediately for her connections to one person in particular. Is Jimmy Rodriguez in this place? Whatever they're doing, all the people they're associating with, why is she there? She is the state attorney general. Other than, Joe, we're seeing all this movement. Why is the state not involved with the feds? You know, they always do parallel investigations. They notify the state. She has been silent. She has not mentioned one word about Eric Adams or Eddie Caban or anything going on there, or this nightclub extortion racket, which it's centered around the Caban brothers, who we've all seen in this nightclub together. It's really like mind-boggling.
It is. It blows your mind. Here's a piece from like 1991. They're saying Rodriguez was involved in building false compartments in cars, transporting guns and drugs. This is the guy that they're all hanging out with. That's the guy in the picture with Letitia James, and it just goes on and on. Chris, if you go down on this piece, we can share some more. It just blows you away. All this corruption with this guy. Here's a couple. I don't know what you'd call them. They got a podcast. A couple guys talking about Jimmy's Cafe, where these they look like gangsters. They're probably not, but what's the significance of these two guys?
I remember that he was talking about them having a cocaine buffet at Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, notorious for drug use. Joe, there was an unsolved murder over there. Joe, it was an unsolved murder. Somebody ended up. They think they moved the body. It's all, and it's still unsolved. There's nothing that they have no leads with that. It's just 30 years old.
Look at all the people that are hanging out there. I mean, you got Major League Baseball players, but then you got Letitia James and Eric Adams and all these supposedly people that are supposed to enforce the law. And here, this guy's calling it a big like cocaine. Didn't he say something like a buffet there or something at one point in time? Yeah. And so here's some more. Just Bronx District Attorney. This lady's there. Here she is with Letitia. A bunch of people there. They're all politicians. See, now right next to her, you see her in the red and white. That's Darcel Clark. Next to her is the Bronx Borough President, Vanessa Gibson, who gave an award to Jimmy Rodriguez. That's insult. I mean, I don't know. And then next to her on her left is Carl Hastie, the Assembly Speaker of New York State. You can't get anything through legislatively without him. And he loves Con Sofrito. It's right near his office up there in the Bronx. He was going there all the time. In fact, he's the guy that had fundraisers there. And we don't even know what happened with that, Joe. Where did the money go with all of those donations? Or is anything registered anywhere? I mean, there's people like Kenny Burgos, he was in the Assembly. Now, apparently, he's a lobbyist. I think that's illegal. He was a lobbyist for the housing market, the housing district now. And he had his fundraisers. We don't have any record of it, but he clearly had two fundraisers at Con Sofrito, and he's pictured there all the time with this guy, Carl Hastie. It's like, I can't wrap my head around this, Joe. It's just unbelievable. It goes on and on. Here's some more people there at, this is the former police commissioner, right? And
at the time, he was the first deputy commissioner in this picture. And then next to him is Keishant Sewell, who is the police commissioner at that time, who ended up terminating me. And there she is. And that's Jimmy taking the picture of that because it's on his Facebook page. And next to her was the head. He was the chief of department at that time. That was the former chief of department at that time. Next to her on the left.
Wow. Just all these people there hanging out at this place with Jimmy. Here's another. Oh, look who might be there.
That's Eric Adams. There's Carl Hastie and Jimmy Rodriguez. And that's the shed. That's the shed that's illegal. They're all in there having a good old time, Joe. Good old time. God knows what's going on in there. You have all kinds of allegations. You got this trafficking thing. You got the drugs. You have the discounted meals. Because why are the police department guys always there? Why are they having parties there all the time? They're there all the time. Joe, I understand if you or I walked in, we have no idea. We go there one time and we leave. But it's the same faces all the time there, all the time. And they're they're all bigwigs, Joe. It's upper echelon. It's not like the little peon cop. It's all executives. What are they doing there? And you're starting to hear more and more about this nightclub extortion ring, and it involves another character. Some guy, he's a deputy mayor of nightlife, a made-up position, by the way, by Eric Adams. And his name is Jeff Garcia, who's also pictured with Jimmy Rodriguez at Con Sofrito all the time. It's just, it goes on, Joe. It's really a crime syndicate.
Mm-hmm. And here was...
there's Phil Banks.
And which one's Phil Banks? Right next to Adams?
Yeah, so here we go. There's Adams. Behind him on the right is the chief of patrol, John Schell. To Adams, our left would be Madry. There's Eddie Caban. To his left is Philip Banks. And all the way in that corner, there's Jimmy Rodriguez right there. See him with the phone. He's videotaping the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, he shouldn't even be around these guys, yet he's hanging around them all the time. Phil Banks just resigned. What's his association with Jimmy Rodriguez? He's been there too. He was in another photo I have of him at Con Sofrito himself. So these connections run far and wide, Joe, far and wide.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable. We've got another article too we can jump into, but the thing that's amazing about all that really is you step back, you say, you lose your job because you were hanging around somebody that they don't like, Roger Stone, who's been pardoned. By the way, has been pardoned. That to me means exonerate. He did nothing wrong. On the other hand, these same people that said you can't hang around with Roger Stone because he's a criminal, whatever you want to say, they are hanging around with this, not just with, but at this facility of Jimmy Rodriguez that's just full, known for cocaine, known now for, attached to trafficking, and all these people are in there, like you said, the upper echelon. It's upside down world, isn't it? It's just unbelievable.
They blurred the lines, Joe, but I could tell you, way back in the day, I believe in 2002 or 2003, you'll look this up, when Hillary Clinton announced her run for the Senate, for the seat in New York State, which now is occupied by Kirsten Gillibrand, she announced it at a laundromat. And on that laundromat, on that door, there was a slip that said, anybody looking to get their bills paid by Jimmy Rodriguez and Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, come to this laundromat. It was owned by Jimmy. She had this announcement in front of a laundromat. It's like a forgotten thing now. But, I mean, they're so close and chummy with him. You want to make this political. You want to make this like a powwow. Anything you want to make it, you keep wrapping around in a circle. What did Sal Greco do that is so bad compared to what you guys in the NYPD did? Because if I'm associating with Roger Stone, they found nothing that I did nefarious. I didn't commit any criminal acts. Neither did Rogers. Apparently, they were probing him too, because they were unveiling his sealed records and violating all kinds of court orders with that. So they were investigating us only to find out there was nothing there. We didn't do anything on January 6th. We weren't even involved in anything. We were in a hotel room, and the day before, we were at two legally permitted rallies. All he did was speak, and we went back to our respective rooms. I don't know what they were thinking. But meanwhile, this whole thing is happening. Look at who they're with and what they're doing. Because remember, that allegation of human trafficking that came out of the human trafficking unit there, this criminal referral, happened in 2021, late 2021 in August. So long before they were even thinking about Sal Greco, what the hell was the upper echelon of police department doing it with this guy and in this place? And the beat goes on and on, Joe. The more we look at this, is the more mind-boggling it becomes, and who's actually involved in this.
This is amazing. Hey, Chris, let's pull up this next article, too, that you helped me with, Sal. We dropped like 5 of these in a row. They were bombs. I believe President Trump saw these as well. Anyways, this was part 4, and it's about Adams. he shuts down a task force to protect Letitia James Castro-loving drug and organized crime-related Bronx businessman. We know who that is. And so if you go down, and like you said, Castro-loving, because he had Castro there back in the 90s. It's unbelievable. Yep. So there again is Letitia with this guy, Rodriguez. And apparently there was a task force, if we keep going down, that was put together. And and I guess put in place by Rudy, I guess, to protect the city. And they started looking into him, and somehow he was able to shut it down. Is that the story?
That's the story of the Cure program, which we're finding out involves this deputy mayor of nightlife. It's called March. They changed it from March to Cure. And that's how this whole corruption, this whole racket, this nightclub racket that they hear, an extortion racket, that's where it stems from. This Cure a program which has all these nefarious characters, the Caban brothers. You have this place that got extorted in Coney Island. In fact, he went to the feds with the video and how they were going there. Because in the system, Joe, we have 311 calls. So the 311 system handles all these nightclub complaints, and it goes to the police department and you show up. But one place in particular had a numerous amount of phone calls. He videotaped the people that showed up. There were 30 cops coming to a noise complaint. And then you come to find out that it was one guy in Eric Adams' administration who's the liaison to this nightclub industry, this nightclub racket there. They had this unit, and his name is Ray Jenkins, a Eric Adams flunky, handed him a number to James Caban, the twin brother of Eddie Caban, who, by the way, who was the police commissioner, and he had a security detail from the NYPD, which is illegal. Joe, he's a civilian. That's official misconduct. There is no reason for a cop to be walking around with a guy who, by the way, has a record. James Caban was thrown off the job, and he was arrested twice. Once as a cop, and then as the slumlord of the Bronx. So no one should be hanging around him, and yet this whole Cure thing is how that came about, because then he went to the guy and said, I can make all these complaints, all these cops go away, give me $2,500. This is a text message. And he went to the feds. So now they're looking into that. And then there's more people, Joe. There's other precincts, Joe. It's just growing of about how many cops and what precinct and who's involved in this. And it's centered around the same people who are operating in the same venue. And it's this place happens to be the hub for these guys. I don't know how to explain it better, but that's it. If you put it on a wall, kind of like my awards here, and you put in the middle Con Sofrito, you'll find that they all gather up in this place, and then it spreads because there are other nightclubs involved, and they went around and trying to extort people, and it's nuts. It really is. We're looking at, back in the day, we had the Gambino crime family and all these crime families, and this sounds like an Eric Adams crime family or Letitia James crime family, because these people were there. We don't know what their business is with all these nefarious characters. But I know one thing, Joe. When you see the government and these criminals, and I'm talking about street level criminals, Joe. We can't comparing Roger Stone to Jimmy Rodriguez or any of those guys like Fat Joe and Peter Guns, two felon rappers. You want to put these guys that were actually committing street level crimes? That's laughable. We're not even going to compare the two, but they're hanging around street level thugs, and that makes no sense because the potential for criminality is tremendous. And here they are, all hanging out there, including Tish James. We don't hear any investigations stemming out of Con Sofrito on a state level. So what was her business there? And she apparently, Joe, hung around them on all they had a lot of different venues that they were doing these little fundraiser parties and gathering up together. And she always showed up when it was a fundraiser or a party. And Tish James, what is her business hanging around these people? Because she's only there for the money. Remember, she is the chief law enforcement officer in the state. She is not involved in any of these investigations right now, and that is really very telling to me, Joe. I've been a police officer 14 years. How does the attorney general not know what the feds are doing or was ever informed? And she's silent about this. She has nothing to say about this. These are all her friends, by the way.
So that kind of leads to the more recent news. Eric Adams came out about a week ago or so that the feds have actually raided the mayor's residency, and they showed videos of that, and it all kind of leads back to this stuff that we reported. I didn't catch the dates on those. I think a year ago, maybe more. And it's like, yeah, we ignited. I just had another piece in the first segment that I wrote about. Now they're finally talking about it, is the money laundering through Act Blue that the Democrats, this whole scam that they got going there. And now here we are in another story that you and I ignited about this I don't know what you call it, restaurant and in the Bronx. And so now they're going after the mayor. What do you think's going on there? What do you think's up?
I hear a lot of this stuff. They keep trying to say that, he's the migrant shelters. That's why they went after him. He made one comment. He said this would destroy the city because, Joe, he was looking for money. Back when Eric Adams originally ran for mayor, he said that New York City would remain a sanctuary city. He also stated numerous times how that the migrant shelters, he was going to, obviously he wanted more money for the migrant shelters. And he said that New York City's official position was that the borders must remain open. That's no pro-Trump stance at all. For anybody trying to equate the two, really, I don't know what you're trying to say. That's like saying Letitia James hanging around felons and criminals is a good thing. So that being said, his investigation stemmed from numerous things, but there was one thing that stuck out more than anything else. Turkey. And there was an incident where a fire department chief sued the fire department in the city of New York and referenced in his lawsuit how these two fire chiefs that ended up getting indicted were running around okaying inspections, kind of like what happened here at Con Sofrito, where they should have been shut down. They cited them from the fire department, yet why weren't they going there and asking for a padlock or saying this place should be shut down? That never happened. He said that they did this with the Turkish consulate. They sped up the investigation, the inspection. Now you go back to Eric Adams, who's very chummy with Turkey. Why? Because back when he was the Brooklyn Borough president, he was on a plane there. He was hanging out over there with two other people that were his advisors, and now slowly they're fading out. But they'll have their own day. They'll have their own problems, and that's Timothy Pearson, a former NYPD inspector who's a thug. I mean, this guy has a litany of problems. Sexual harassment lawsuits. He manhandled a security guard at the migrant shelter, which, by the way, he was in charge of those contracts. That's what Eric Adams wanted. He wanted more money because his friend Timothy Pearson was in charge of those contracts. And where did they dump all those migrant shelters, Joe? They dropped them in. We'll call it a median household income. The middle class, working conservative, a.k.a. Trump voters, their neighborhoods, and the lower class neighborhoods, Joe. They never dropped any of them in the upper class elitist areas, right? There's nothing up there in the upper west side of Manhattan. There's nothing in the fancy areas of New York City. No. Why? That's the guy you're saying is being politically a witch hunt. It's a political witch hunt on, which then we'll get to his indictment, Joe. In Turkey, he was getting donations out. In New York City, there's that matching funds program. It's 8-to-1 on every $250 that are donated. They were getting straw donors from his Turkish friends and his Turkish government, right? And all of that equated to $10 million. That's $10 million of taxpayer money that went to Eric Adams. Nobody sees a problem with that? You think that that's just, we're supposed to forget about that. And now we're going to get, so he got charged the same way Bob Menendez was charged. And the same way that Brooklyn Democrats very recently in Brooklyn were charged for the same straw donor activity. This is not uncommon in New York City politics or any local politician. But let's get to the Trump indictment. So when Trump was indicted, right, what did they use in one of those things, which was insane? That was the document case. Now, they went back to an 1800 statute, which over 100 years ago and was never even used, to find something in some way to get those warrants and ultimately prosecute Donald Trump on what? This ridiculous thing that he had these documents. Eric Adams is charged with things that commonly occur and that they do from time to time get you for, and that's eliciting foreign donations and the public matching funds, the $10 million he took. That is the crux of that case, Joe. It has nothing to do with politics or political. And if you want to say it is political, all right, but it doesn't mean they didn't commit a crime, Joe. And to equate the two, President Trump and Eric Adams, is insane. It's completely off the rails bonkers to try to put the two men in the same vehicle. Because I'll tell you what, when President Trump was in Manhattan, and he was being persecuted. And on the day that they said they were going to have announce his verdict, it was Eric Adams in the morning that went on and said, well, I'll have Rikers Island open if they need it for him. There is no friendship. Anyone trying to say these two guys, I don't know what Republican, MAGA Republican or politicians going out there saying is, it's a far stretch. His actions and his words are two things. That's Eric Adams. He's a highly conflicted individual who surrounds himself with corruptible people. That's his whole MO since his days in the police department, Joe.
Yeah, he'll say anything, it looks like, whichever way the wind blows for him. And yeah, but that was the big question. When he got arrested or when they went into his place and they announced that they were indicting him for these charges, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's because he stood up against this illegal immigration. So they must be going after him for that. Sal, how can people follow you and where can they reach out to you?
That's sure. So on my X and my Instagram, it's at the Sal Greco. Truth Social at Head of the Table. I have my own show. It's on YouTube and Rumble, The Sal Greco Show. You can check up on my website. Check it out. I like to put my own show up there. It's salgreco.com. If you feel like supporting the show, hit the support button, and that helps out the show, trying to get things rolling, make it a little bigger and, maybe grandioso. But I like to talk about this kind of stuff, Joe, because these corrupt individuals, that's what's holding down not only the city, the state, but the country, Joe. Corruption must be rooted out.
Amen. And you wonder how we could have corrupt elections.
Oh, yeah.
Look who's in charge. It's unbelievable. Sal, great work. Thanks for doing everything, man. Great seeing you again. And we'll have to have you back soon. Stay on top of this. Yeah, way to go. Great stuff. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Sal. And we will be back tomorrow with another great show. Thanks for joining us. That was incredible. My God. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless. Be safe. We'll see you then.